Anne-Marie here, and today I am walking you through two projects using this set of supplies. So these were Mother's Day presents. I am still technically frozen. I have about 14 more projects to do as of the recording of this before I am allowing myself to be unfrozen. But for Mother's Day, I was asked what I wanted, and I told him. So I got the Peony Memories stamp set and coordinating dies, and the Ditsy Bits stamp set and dies from the Ton stamps. So I'm going to use them. All right, so I'm just preparing some pieces now that fit the Ditsy Bits stamps. Okay, that sounded really weird, but I tried to cut them all the same. I don't know if anybody else is trimming challenged as I am, but I can think I'm cutting things the same size and then not. So you'll see as I go that some of them are different sizes, and oh well. Okay, so these are the Ditsy Bits, and I'm applying them on my mini stamp platform and just using inks from my stash. So I've gone through and stamped all the leaf backgrounds, and now I'm going through and I'm doing all the colors. And I am cleaning off my stamps in between, but I always found that there's a little bit left over. Maybe I'm not thorough enough. So I am kind of going in somewhat of an order of light to dark. And this is kind of a 3-step stamp, or stamp set, because there's the leaf that you do in green, and then there's two tones of colors that you do with the flowers. So there's 3 stamps in the stamp set, and there's a close-up showing you the green leaves, the 2 shades of ink to make the little flowers. Also, you are hearing the 2 new cats that we just adopted. That's Billy and Shane in the background. All right, so then I use the accompanying die or the matching die to cut these out. And oh my gosh, I'm in love with this process. I never really would spring for coordinating dies, and I still usually don't, but man, it sure is satisfying. You sure get a lot of things quickly. It's awfully nice. So I understand why people do it. Okay, so I'm also problem solving. This is the Peony Memory stamp set, and I'm having some incomplete ink transfer, which is not supposed to be a problem with stamping platforms because you can just go right back in the exact same area, and voila. That is the magic of stamping platforms. For somebody like me, I can't line that stuff up myself. So I'm really, really grateful for the invention of stamping platforms because they really do help. So I did that again, lightest to darkest. And now I'm going in with my second color. So generally like the next tone that I had just in my own stamps. I didn't have like multiple yellow sets. And so my next tone on my yellow peonies is going to be kind of a coral color. And it still turned out really pretty. Okay, so this is where I messed up though. I should have been able to stamp these leaves connected to the floral set of stamps, and I didn't realize that until I was, too far in. And it only affected a couple of the inked images or stamped images, so I didn't go back and redo all the work that I'd already done. It wasn't worth it to me. I didn't want to waste that. So I just didn't utilize the 2 or 3 little pieces that I couldn't get. And for this, I experimented a little. I did use, 2 shades of green, but then I was really kind of out as far as my own personal color choices. One of my lime greens was dried out, and I ended up using that brown, and it worked beautifully. So if you see, here I'm doing the centers. If you see the little dots there's like 3 sets of little dots on the flowers, kind of floating out in the white space. Those should have had leaves attached and like a little vine. And that's what I messed up by not setting up my stamps correctly. But oh well, it's really not a big deal. Okay, and then I cut all these out. This was a little tedious. I understand why people get the automated die cutting machines with the motors for sure. But I finished up all of those and die cut all of those. And it really is satisfying. All right, so now I'm die cutting out the leaves. Yeah, you can see where the white is left. That's where it would have lined up with stamps, flower stamps. And so I just didn't use those pieces. You can see there where the green would have filled in on those little dots, these little kind of clusters of buds is what it looks like. All right, so for my first project, I am scrapbooking this picture of my mother. I actually got to scrapbook this on Mother's Day, so that was kind of nice. Isn't she beautiful? Oh, she's still gorgeous. I can only hope to have skin like hers when I'm her age. So I'm kind of laying these out. My thought is a big swath of flowers, kind of in rough rainbow order. I did not use green from the rainbow because there's green in the leaves. So I still did 6 colors though because I included pink. And I just put pink at the end of purple. So instead of Roy G. Bip, I have red, orange, yellow, blue, purple, pink. And in my line, I wanted this kind of curved, kind of undulating diagonal. But what ended up happening, because there was just so many flowers, and I didn't even use them all, but there were just enough that I wanted to use that it filled it out so that it didn't look necessarily as swirly as I wanted it to. But that's okay, it was still really pretty. So I'm just going to start laying everything out now. I am not going to adhere that directly. I'm going to use self-adhesive photo corners. I always do that when I'm working with very vintage photos that cannot be reproduced easily. I don't know why, I'll be honest. I just don't want to damage the picture. It shouldn't. Our adhesives are supposed to be acid free, right? But I don't know. That's how I was raised in the scrapbooking world, was to never adhere vintage photos directly to the paper, so I don't. And you can just see me now, I'm playing with the placement of the flowers. And this is where my impatience, it just is what it is, but I just started sticking down as I went because I felt like that would just be quicker, more to the point. I generally, this is how I create. But it does generally also create some problems for me that I then have to solve that I wouldn't have to if I would be a little bit more patient and take a little bit more time and play with things a little bit more. So it's a trade-off. I feel like I would just obsess over it and never, ever commit to sticking anything down if I did do that, I guess. And so I'd rather just forge ahead blindly. There, I'm just kind of tracing that. But that's where I feel like it went wrong, was in the blues and purples. I think I should have used one less purple and maybe one less blue flower. And then that line would have flowed the way I wanted it to better. But that's okay. Again, these flowers are gorgeous, so it all worked out. All right, so now I'm starting to tuck in little bits of the ditzy bits that match, just to kind of fill it out. Again, Maybe if I'd played with it more, I was a little bit more patient with this one. I did go through and physically play around with them before I glued them. And then I started adding in leaves. And I pretty freely chopped up leaves as I went. Some of them I left together as in bigger chunks, but I was also okay with just chopping one leaf off and using it here or there. And now I'm going in with my Wink of Stella, just doing this in a few places that I wanted to highlight. Usually on the darker color accent is where I would go in, but I also did a little bit on the centers. All right, so there's our basic outline of flowers, leaves, and the ditzy bits. I don't know where they get that name from. When I think of ditzy, I don't think of a variety of tiny flowers. So I'm curious. That must be a meaning I'm not familiar with. Anyway, now I want to add some gems. And I've talked to you before about these rainbow rhinestones that I purchased off Amazon sometime last year. But the only orange I had was like day glow orange. It would not be appropriate. So I had to get a little creative with that. Basically, I ended up using a dark red with the red and a light red with the orange. And I did not use the orange that I had because it just really, it was like highlighter orange. I don't know when I'll ever use those. I need to doctor them with my alcohol markers. That's what I need to do. But I'm just going to go through and place. I have a general rule that I followed where I would place 3 gems. 1 large, 1 medium, 1 small. And I would usually either cluster the 3 of them together like that, or 2 on one side and 1 on the other. Okay, so there's all of the gems added. And to me, that was like the perfect finishing touch. I liked that. Now looking at this, in hindsight, with that being what it is, I wish that I would have extended the diagonal literally from corner to corner. Again, I had in mind that kind of undulation along the diagonal, and it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to, but I still love this layout, so it's all good. Just going to work on the title now. I've added a little bit of typed journaling, and none of my stickers really, I didn't really have anything in my stash that I liked, so I used some die cut pieces here, the die cut alphabet. All right, so the layout is complete. And we're moving on to making some sets of cards now, or making a set of cards. I'm going to make 6 cards. Each one will be using the flowers that are left over per different colors. So I'll have a red card, an orange, a yellow, a blue, a purple, and a pink. And so first I'm just cutting card blanks, and these are going to be top fold cards. And I want a very thin mat for each of these. So I'm going to my scraps and I'm finding some coordinating scraps. All right, so I was using that square die, square stitched die. It's the largest one in my set, and it's not that large. It's about 4 by 4. I don't know, I almost feel like these were mini cards. I had to cut down those bases even more. But I went through and I cut the stitched squares out of some embossed white cardstock that I had, and then I matted them in a very thin mat with the coordinating scraps. And now I'm going through and adding the sentiments. So the sentiments are actually from the Ton stamps as well. I got these right before my freeze. These are called Easy Expressions, and they are set up so that you can stamp and cut out about a dozen sentiments for a variety of occasions in one go. So I went through and I made sets for each of my colors, and now I have a ton that are left over in every color of the rainbow that I can just reach for whenever I need a sentiment. So I'm loving that. And now I just get to play around and get the flowers where I want them. So my general rule, I didn't force myself to use up every single thing. My general rule was one large flower, one small flower, and a few ditzy bits. And then I would place the sentiment. I usually would pop dot the largest flower on the card and then tuck everything else kind of around it. So now you see me just adding each of the rest of the elements. The cards are small enough that, I just put the sentiment straight on top of the flowers. And added some gems, just like I did on the layout. That's the best way I found to kind of stretch a set of supplies. I mean, especially like a stamp set, to just use it in a really similar way. So I found what worked, accenting the flowers with gems, so I'm gonna do it again on the cards. And again, some Wink of Stella on the darker accent pieces. It's so subtle, but I love it. And so here I've finished all the cards. Give you a little gander at each of them. I'm sorry my nails were so distracting. What a crazy color scheme to end. Like I had blue and purple earlier in the video, but that did not seem as bad as this neon highlighter yellow I had this week, sorry. Questionable nail color choices aside, I really love how these cards turned out. And I, obviously love playing with new supplies, like who doesn't? But I think this has got to be like my go-to from now on, is making sure I make a layout and a set of cards with something. I just feel like I got a good value out of it just on the first go. And it sparked ideas for other projects. So I still have more to do, with this. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I will be back at some point. I've got lots of videos kind of planned out, and I look forward to sharing those with you. So, all right, bye guys, take care.